Welcome to Raise Nation Radio, the podcast for nonprofit movers, shakers, and change makers. We are here to fuel your passion with a daily dose of fundraising inspiration while keeping the conversations and connections from the annual Raise Conference alive all year long. Tune in for fresh perspectives, bold strategies, and the hottest trends lighting up the nonprofit world. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro, buckle up. Each episode is packed with lively discussions, expert insights, and creative solutions to help you make an even bigger impact. Now get ready for another exciting episode. Please welcome your host from One Cause, Don Lego.
Hello, Raise Nation. Welcome back to our show. I'm your host, Don Lego, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. We've been together for a good while, and I so appreciate you being part of our incredible community, helping make this channel what it is. If you're new, well, you have about 180 episodes to catch up on, but that's okay. Rock at your own pace. We've sparked stories and ideas. We've warmed hearts. We've inspired better fundraising. Today's episode is no different. We're going to do two of those things. We're going to spark ideas and inspire better fundraising. So I don't know, get comfy and let's dive in. I have with me today the pleasure of chatting with Dan Radcliff. He is the program director at, and I'm going to say this wrong, Eder Financial.
You got it right.
I got it right. Woohoo. So the reason why I thought I was going to pronounce it wrong is because it is spelled with an E, not an A, but it's pronounced Eder Financial. And you know what? You don't have to remember that. We're going to drop it in the show notes. I might even put it phonetically and the right way to spell it. But Dan, welcome to Raise Nation Radio. We're so glad that you're here today.
Don, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you and learn a little bit more about Raise Nation and share a little bit more about what we do.
Yeah, I want to hear all about it. But first, we want to get to know you. Tell Raise Nation all about Dan Radcliff, your journey, how you ended up at Eder, what you do, anything you want to share personally. We just really want to get to know and feel connected to you first.
Sure. So I live in Northern Illinois with my wife, our two daughters, and our kooky cat, Andromeda.
What's the kooky cat's name?
Andromeda.
Oh, you just said it, Andromeda. Okay, got it.
We typically call her Miss Mew. But yeah, we enjoy barbecuing, playing outdoors, gardening. From a vocational standpoint, I came up through the for-profit banking world, so spent some time as a relationship and a private client banker with a large multinational firm. Spent a couple years as a financial advisor with a separate multinational firm, and then came over in 2020 to Eder Financial. At the time, folks may recall, those were the COVID years. That was a good time for a lot of us to sort of reassess what brings us joy, what puts wind in our sails, what helps us to feel like we're making a difference in the world. And I was invited by the president of the organization to consider Eder Financial as a solution. And I've been so blessed and overwhelmed to be a part of the team that's here, that we're building, the way that we serve other nonprofits. It's a little bit something different than I've ever done before. And so it's a lot of fun to be a part of this initiative in this group.
Well, then tell us about that. Tell us all about Eder Financial and what you do there. And let's get to know now the company behind the man, so to speak.
Sure. So my official title is the Program Director of Organizational Investing, Deferred Gifts, and Client Services. Our organization also provides business-to-business solutions for retirement plans, as well as health, life, and medical insurance for employer groups. I'm certainly most familiar with the organizational investing and deferred giving piece, as that's where I spent a lot of my time as the program director. But it's been a lot of fun as well to be in the client services role, learn more about the different ways that we come alongside, collaborate with our clients, help them further their impact of their mission, help them to serve their staff and boards at a higher level, at a more consistent level. So yeah, that's a little bit about Eder Financial, is sort of those four key product lines.
All right, yeah, let's go through them again.
The organizational investing, deferred giving, retirement, health and life. So we cover a pretty fair amount of ground amongst those four.
That is a spectrum.
areas.
Yeah, for sure. So now you come from for-profit and now you're working with nonprofit communities, and Eder works in both, serves for-profit and nonprofit companies, or
Good question.
Yeah, let's clear that up. I want to understand that better if you don't mind.
We only serve nonprofit entities and we
Oh,
consider ourselves to be a business-to-business partnership. So,
okay.
well, certainly there are plan participants in a retirement plan. We consider our key relationship to be with the organization, not at the participant level, if that makes sense.
Okay. Got it. Wow. So what are nonprofits working with you? Well, let's talk about how many nonprofits are you serving at this time?
Yeah, part of that does depend on the product line.
Okay.
Based on the last math that I saw, we currently have around 430-ish clients in the retirement space, around half that in the organizational investing space, and around that same number in the health and life program if you count our ancillary programs as well. So think of things like pet insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability, things that are sort of secondary to that or medical health insurance that most folks think of when they think of health coverage.
Wow, you really serve quite the repertoire, don't you? What's it like for you having moved from the for-profit space to the nonprofit sector? We've had some folks at One Cause that have transitioned over. What is that experience like for you?
So there are parts of it that I really resonate strongly with me. For example, I don't have to return any sort of quarterly profit to shareholders. I'm not driven by market events. It allows me to really keep my eye on the client and what their need is. There may be times in the for-profit space where there might be more of a conflict of interest. For example, if I'm generating a commission for selling a product in the for-profit world, I've got some skin in the game, and it might impact the way that I'm making my recommendations or impact the way that I'm providing education to my clients, as opposed to in the nonprofit space where we're not paid those kinds of compensation packages, right? And so it allows us to really focus on what does the client's need. Now, that also sometimes comes at a different cost, whereas maybe in the for-profit world, if I'm one person in an organization with 250,000 employees, I've got a very small defined responsibility set that I've got to take care of. Now, translate that over to Eder Financial, we have a total of 30 employees. So throughout the course of the year, I might find, or even the day, I might find myself changing different hats. Maybe I'm focused more on the marketing element in this conversation, or the product design, or the finance, or the client servicing that we provide, and all that sort of rolled up into one. And from my conversations that I have with my clients and partners in the nonprofit space, that seems like a pretty common experience, is that when you work in the nonprofit world, you've got to be able
Changing
to
the hat all day long, right? That hat is just,
that hat.
I walk in with a baseball cap. I go to lunch in a
Mhm.
beanie, and yeah.
Yeah.
And by the evening, I'm in a fascinator and everything else in between. Yeah, that nonprofits wear a lot of hats. So that's a great segue because, you do a lot of things at Eder. You serve nonprofits, in a full scope. But I know that sustainable giving and future proofing fundraising is wildly on nonprofits' minds, right? They're looking for new revenue streams and sustainability and deeper connections. So I think when I put all of those buzzwords together, it kind of leads me to one area, if you wouldn't mind focusing on today. And I think that's legacy gifts, planned giving, and connecting with donors. I think that that's a missed opportunity with many, many, many nonprofits because they are so busy and they are wearing so many hats and they are like one more thing, right, that I have to figure out. And with that, typically there's a lot of legalese and my goodness, right? How do I peel back the layers of that onion? So is that something we can talk about today? Because I think our audience would really appreciate breaking it down and knowing how Eder Financial could help, because there's opportunity there, not just in the legacy time of somebody's life, but even well before, I believe. So help me out here.
Yeah, and you're right to call out that this is one of the most impactful portions of the long-term success of a nonprofit. But because of that long fuse on the
Now, why
plan,
do you say that? Why do you say that? That's a bold statement. Why do you say that?
it is a lot. So the reason I say that is oftentimes when folks are making their plan giving legacy considerations, it's typically going to be at one of a couple of key moments in their lives, one of which might be retirement. So let's say, for example, I'm in my late 50s, early 60s. I'm meeting with my spouse, perhaps my family, my other experts, right? The accountants, the financial advisors, potentially
All the
attorneys,
people.
all the people, right? We got the whole gang together, and we're making some big decisions on what potentially the next couple of decades will look like. Well, if planned giving is a part of that conversation, in many instances, a planned giving vehicle, once it's been put into place, it's irrevocable. You can't change your mind on it.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. No, there are some where there is a little bit of flexibility, but most of what you'll hear me chat about today is that space of irrevocable planned gifts. But if I'm making that decision in my late 50s and early 60s, in a lot of cases with these planned giving vehicles, that money will not truly become an asset of the nonprofit that they can use for their own missions and vision until a death event.
Right. Okay.
And so that might be 20 or 30 years in the future. And so if I'm a nonprofit,
But the nonprofit can count on it, right? It can be in there.
Correct. And that's the benefit of that irrevocable nature of that gift is
I see.
The donor has committed a pool of assets to behave in a certain way. And at the end of that cycle period, which is often defined by a death event, then the assets become the property of that nonprofit for them to spend in accordance with the agreement, often in an undesignated or unrestricted manner. And so if I'm, for example, like an executive director or a president of a nonprofit, and I'm focused on, hey, how do I get through the next 12 months, the next 18 months? I've got my annual fundraising campaign. Maybe I've got a capital campaign that I'm navigating alongside these things. To have the conversation of the money that will move in 20 or 30 years can sometimes feel like a lower priority, and it can be hard to really cognify the impact that some of these planned gifts will mean both to them and to the donors.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of make sense the way I described that?
It does. Sure. So how do you advise nonprofits to navigate that? Why? Because you opened with, this is the most impactful giving for nonprofits. So if it is that uncertain, the when, and well, I guess we've solved for the how, but how do they navigate that? How do you help them?
Yeah. So for nonprofits that maybe don't already have an established planned giving program, where this starts is with a conversation. Know your donors, understand why they connect with your mission, how much they affirm your mission and your ministry, how much they want to come alongside you to be that partner. Because then when you provide these possible planned giving vehicles as that solution, it helps them start to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's kind of the main gift of philanthropy in this country is it allows you to keep control and flexibility of your voice, right? You're voting with your dollars in this instance, and we can talk a little bit about the tax considerations later, but think about where most people in America have their money. It's in a house, it's in a retirement account. Now, certainly there may be lots of different flavors beyond that. If you're at a privately held business that, your grandfather started the plumbing business 30 years ago and now it's worth $5 million, but it's a privately held company. There's a myriad of ways that people have structured their assets. But when I survey America as a whole, most folks have the vast majority of their assets in those two key buckets, the house and in their retirement accounts.
And when you say house, you don't mean the mattress. You mean the value or the asset of their property. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
Now, as it turns out, folks still need to maintain control or authority over their retirement accounts. Just because you've reached retirement age, Dawn, doesn't mean necessarily you want to say, all right, now I'm going to immediately give all my money to charity. If you did that, who's going to buy you lunch tomorrow? Or you might say, well, we own this house and it's worth a lot of more money than what we bought it for all those years ago, but I still need somewhere to live during my living years. Now, you may have that giving heart. You may feel that connection to that nonprofit, but you still have other needs, right? And so that's partly where planned giving comes alongside both the donor and the nonprofit. It gives the nonprofit the comfort of, hey, we've implemented this planned giving vehicle. We have the comfort of knowing the money's on its way. But then the donor on their side and for their part, they have the comfort of knowing, and this planned giving vehicle is moving in accordance with what my needs are. And needs can be very different as the assets are. So, for example, some planned giving vehicles might have an income component. In other words, hey, with a charitable remainder unit trust, I'll give you XYZ dollars. You pay me a stream of income during my living years. And then when I pass away, you get to keep the rest of the money. That's a
And
win-win
what did
for
you call
everyone.
that? Charity? What did you call that?
A charitable remainder unit trust.
Okay.
So there are a couple of different core types of plan giving vehicles, and I'm happy to do a little bit to explore with you what some of those might look like. But what I'd like for your key takeaway to be, Dawn, and for that of our viewers, is that the world of plan giving revolves around two key functions: control and flexibility. So when I speak of control, think about it like this. If I pay money in taxes, it goes to maybe the local, the state, the federal government, and they've all got their own budgets. Well, me, Dan, if I were to pick up the phone and call my local senator and say, hey, Senator Lego, I've been thinking we should spend more money on this instead of on that. And then my senator says, oh, you know what, Dan, you're right. We're going to go ahead and rip up our existing budget, and we're going to do the things that you want us to do. Doesn't usually happen like that. Now, on the other hand, if you are keeping that money from being paid in taxes and able to send it to a nonprofit, you've retained control over what you've worked hard during your life to
Meaning
save.
the donor. Yeah, the donor.
Correct.
So it's an incentive. There's a tax incentive to plan your giving in your current life and in your afterlife.
Correct. And so think about it like this. The estate tax will not impact most donors. In other words, most of what people will leave behind after they've passed away will not be subject to that tremendously high 40% estate tax. And while there is certainly a subsector of donors that may be subject to that, if a donor reaches the end of their life and they elect to give all of their money to charity after their death, they can certainly do that in something like a will. But if they don't engage plan giving prior to their death, they didn't benefit from their own tax advantage. You can only benefit from that tax advantage during your living years, unless you're subject to that estate tax. And again, that's such a small subsector of America that would be subject to that high wealth estate tax. And so what plan giving does is it allows someone to define for themselves, what do I want to happen to my money later, as well as I want to harvest my tax advantage when it makes sense for me, when I'm able to truly benefit from that. And so that's a strong incentive for a donor to consider a planned gift outside of the generosity of a will or a bequest.
Yeah. Our audience is listening intently, right? We know that this is important, but just in this conversation, there's a lot of complexities, and it's really, I think, getting started and getting that process going. So what are you suggesting to get started? I would think, wait, I need to think about my words here. How you're talking to your donors, your donors. You're not going to wait until, I think that he's getting a little up there. Maybe That's probably not a good thing. It doesn't even sound good, feel good. It's just awkward and insensitive, right? So this is probably something that you should communicate all the time, every time, right? Say, hey, think about or whatever it is. But what percent of your fundraisings should be dedicated to this? Often, what's the frequency? How do you get started? How do you educate your donor, right? To make this not be, he's getting up there in years. It's time to reach out to Mr. Smith and see what he's got. That just doesn't feel like the right approach.
Yeah, and you're certainly right to call out that you want to start years before someone is, quote, at death's door to start making.
I didn't want to say that, but okay, that's what I was thinking.
And so maybe, the two places that I might recommend an organization to start is one, familiarize yourself with the variety of plan giving vehicles that exist out there. Now, that might look like something like reaching out to an organization like Eder Financial and saying, hey, we don't have a bunch of documents that talk in plain text language to our donors about these items. And that's one way that we can bring some additional value in the way that we come alongside folks, is helping to translate from the Greek of the financial world to the plain English of where our donors and most of our financial nonprofit leadership exists, to help really understand what are the use case scenarios, when might it make sense for someone to consider a donor advised fund versus a charitable trust, for example. So to sort of understand hey, let me just get the basic framework of what is the world that I'm entering. And then the second part of that would be analyzing your donor database. So take a look at who are the folks that are giving on a consistent basis. who's given over a long period of time, who has the willingness and capacity to give at a higher level, and then inform them, empower them, educate them on some of those tools. Because as you start to understand more about what your donors' needs are and where they're starting from, you can help provide that knowledge as a bridge to getting them through to that decision element. Now, as I affirmed again earlier, plan giving conversations will occur in an ecosystem of individuals. It'll include the donor's family members, the accountants, the financial advisors, maybe some attorneys, potentially a gift officer, depending upon the sophistication of the nonprofit that they're dealing with. And then where we can also come alongside and potentially add some additional value is if we've got a donor that maybe feels like they know what they want or need, but they don't necessarily know how to get there, we're happy to come alongside gift officers, treasurers, board chairs for those high impact conversations, provide some additional clarity, and where it makes sense, also provide an illustration. So think of maybe like a multi-page document that shows the donor, hey, if you were to donate 100 shares of Apple stock on this date in this planned giving vehicle, here would be some potential tax considerations for you. Here would be the potential income stream for you. It really helps put down to dollars and cents. What would this mean for me if we actually did that? And then if the donor decides that that's a good fit, that planned giving vehicle, we can come alongside as an administrator. So think of the team of folks in the back office that handles the direct deposit updates, the power of attorney. If someone passes away, who's tracking that? Who's liquidating accounts? Who's managing the investment suite where these plan giving vehicles are invested? Because that's one of the other beautiful parts about most planned gifts is they're usually converted from one asset type into other investments. And so they continue to grow and produce growth and interest and dividends as time goes on. And so, yes, you made a comment earlier, boy, this can get really complicated quickly. It sure can.
Okay.
But think of us as a compass.
So is it turnkey? So like I'm a nonprofit. I'd like to get my planned giving platform off the ground. I'm wearing all those hats and I'm distracted and focused on so many things. I can rely on Eder Financial in a turnkey manner to make sure that I'm
Correct.
sustaining this communication with my donors, because if I can get a pool of people today, tomorrow, then that's when it starts to sustain my impact, my mission.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that would be
And
maybe
consistency, I guess, would be important too.
it is consistency of messaging, consistency of advocacy, advocating on behalf of your donors' needs, advocating on behalf of your organization's needs, because that, we can really focus on the tax considerations, which are important. There is a financial incentive for individuals and families to consider planned gifts, as well as, of course, for the nonprofit. But at the end of the day, a non-quantifiable element that's still important is that joy that brings, because the act of giving, and frankly, planned giving will allow a donor to experience the act of giving at a higher capacity, at a higher level than they will at any other place in their life. And so it truly is a benefit. And when you phrase to that turnkey element, now certainly we will work with nonprofits to help them craft like a communication strategy and a platform. It's still up to them at the end of the day to know their donors, to be engaged in conversation. We're not here to interject ourselves as a part of that. We want to untether you from the administrative duties so that you can focus on the relationship, so that you can focus on the donor and your nonprofit's mission. If you can focus on those things, and we can help supply you with suggested verbiage, come alongside you to.
That's huge, huge. I mean, we can find trusted resources like Eder Financial, right? And we know what we need to do, and we could have our donors, and if we've done a good job with, segmenting our donor database and understanding them and the right CRM and all, right? But if you can't communicate it to your donors, all of those things are kind of useless. You really need that communication. And I think that is such a brilliant differentiating point with Eder Financial, that you can help with that communication strategy. That's just huge.
Think of us as your series of levees. You know how when you have two rivers that are running along and they're at different levels? Your donors and your team at the nonprofit are the ones that are providing that velocity of the water that flows, but we're the ones that provide the structure that help you raise up to the next tier, to the next level, so that you can achieve that long-term goal. Does that
I
make
got the
sense?
visual. Yeah, that makes sense. It's a beautiful visual. So what are legacy gifts in terms of dollars and cents? Are they typically smaller, larger, mega? Like where?
It's a good question. So I would say that the typical legacy gift would be 200 to 300 times what someone would typically give on an annual basis. So again, think of
Wait. Come
yeah.
on. Requires a little repeat. You rinse and repeat there. 200 to 300 times what they would give as an annual gift?
Correct.
Oh my, that's
Well,
nice math.
it does. It certainly works in the favor of the nonprofit and to the tax advantage of the donor.
Okay.
These are large pools of money that we're talking about. And so that's partly why these are such important decisions, because oftentimes a planned or a legacy gift will be the largest gift that an individual or family will make during their lifetime. And
Uh-huh.
it will often represent those biggest buckets of money that they have. So let's say maybe I'm a donor in my mid to late 60s and I'm living on, we'll call it a fixed income, because I've got maybe a variety of different retirement accounts and I've got to get Christmas and Easter gifts for the grandbabies or birthdays or for my friends and lots of things that my money needs to do. And so I'm balancing what my income is against what my outflow is, which includes philanthropic giving. But when we reach the end of life considerations for those kinds of legacy and plan gifts, we're talking about those big pools of money, often at the entire account level. Maybe, this account would go to my family and that account would go to a nonprofit. That could be half of what their net worth is at the time that they pass.
And in day-to-day living, when you're looking at your income and your expenses, you're not liquidating the assets like what you mentioned before, the house, and then that happens at the end of life. Now you have that asset that's available.
And sometimes plan giving and legacy giving can also be very creative, because most folks, when they think of charitable giving, they think of cash, which of course you can give to a nonprofit. But I've heard it said that cash is the least efficient thing to give to a nonprofit. What you want to give is an appreciated asset. So that might mean something like a stock or a bond, which again, if you buy in your use, let it ride until you're in your 70s, it's probably grown in value by a significant amount if it was a high quality company. But it can also be other more creative enterprises. Maybe that would be a Picasso painting. I've heard of fine art or ornate antique vases being given as non-cash gifts to a nonprofit, or a baseball card collection, a Pokemon card collection, cryptocurrency, anything that has tangible value that could be resold by the nonprofit creates a positive tax consideration on behalf of the donor, and it creates an asset that can be liquidated for the nonprofit.
So many opportunities, really. So it's endless opportunities. Really need a trusted resource like Eder Financial. And it's so essential and important, right? If you're going to sustain your mission. What were you talking about earlier? Did you say something? Did I hear that right? Planned giving vehicles? Is there one vehicle or are there multiple vehicles? Are they all the same? Are they different? Can you help me out there?
Well, that's a great question. So there are multiple types of planned giving vehicles, and they run the gamut around those two themes you were chatting about earlier, the control and the flexibility.
Okay.
So there are things like that would allow you to see the impact of your gift with your living eyes, and that might be something like establishing a donor advised fund or a family foundation.
That whole world is crazy, the donor advised fund. There is so much, billions and billions and billions sitting in donor advised funds. I hope we see something on Capitol Hill where that is concerned, to just move some of that money. That's a whole crazy thing there.
Well, certainly that's a hot topic in the industry right now, when you've got some of these giant donor advised funds at some of the major warehouses that hold these. It does create a lot of eyes on the circumstance where maybe Capitol Hill is saying, hey, we've got trillions of dollars of planned giving that is just sitting and not being deployed in an active manner. Every once in a while, I hear some rumors that there might be some legislation coming down to address that. I think there's plenty going on in Capitol Hill today.
You think? There's a lot going on in the world today. We're recording this, and I heard that we have a new pope for those of you who are following the Catholic religion. And I was anxiously awaiting a few minutes
Oh,
before we
myself.
logged on. Yeah, I was anxiously waiting to see who was voted in, but I don't know yet. I don't know if you know, but I'll get off the podcast and definitely check that out. But there's just so much world and US things going on. It's crazy.
There are.
Yeah.
And it is hard to predict the future. And that's where, again, plan giving can actually be a big help for us because, for example, it might be important for a donor to have a fixed income. They say to themselves, I know what my bills are. I just need XYZ dollars a month. Well, in that instance, it might make sense for them to consider a charitable remainder annuity trust, which guarantees exactly what that payout might be as an income stream to the donor or their family. Now, contrast that with what I mentioned earlier, that charitable remainder unit trust. While the income streams that come from that unit trust will fluctuate with market conditions. Now, that might be attractive to a donor who is fearful of the impact of inflation on their purchasing power, or that might be an appropriate giving vehicle for a donor who wants to fund their planned giving vehicle across multiple years or from different types of asset bases. And so really it depends upon what is important to the donor. Do they have an income need? And how do they prefer that income need operate? What is the specific asset that they're looking to gift? Do they have an expectation that it come back to their family as what might occur in a charitable lead trust? Or again, do they want to see the impact with their living eyes, in which case they might lead towards that donor advised fund, which have exploded in popularity by 400% over the last decade for exactly the reasons that we're referring to here. People want to see the impact while they're still alive. They want the flexibility of how they're funding into that planned giving vehicle. In the case of the donor advised fund, they don't have an income need. And so what we've done in part at Eder Financial is to try to create resources that sort of help set the framework of the decision itself. What is important to me as a donor? What are the needs that I'm trying to address to help me sort of laser focus in on what is that giving vehicle that will meet my need? Because it is a very robust and interesting and complicated environment to operate in.
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why nonprofits are having some challenges and barriers to having a comprehensive program in place. So we probably can talk another hour or two on this topic, but I think what we did is definitely underscore the importance. And thank you for helping me unpack that and for sharing all of this with our Raise Nation audience. How do we learn more from Eder Financial? What is the easiest way to get connected with you, to learn more, and to kind of unpack this a little bit further? Let's get serious now.
Yeah, so other ways that the folks can learn more would be going through some of our official resources. You can go to our website, eder.org. That's EDER.
Oh, we'll get it all on the short. We'll get it in the show notes. We'll put all the clicks in. If there's some specific resources that you have in mind, aside from just the general website, I'd love for you to share them with me so I can share them with our audience, and I'll get them right to the places they need to go.
Absolutely. Well, I would encourage folks to first review what I call the one-pagers. So
the one-pager, okay.
The one-pagers.
I like one-pagers. I can digest them.
Well, and that's exactly what they were designed to do. Each of these one-pagers is focused on either a specific planned giving vehicle or a specific type of charitable giving. And it helps folks both at the fundraiser side and on the donor side understand some of the pros and cons of each of these vehicles. What are some of the things and considerations that folks should be aware of as to how these vehicles operate? And then that flow chart that you saw me sort of describing to you earlier, where it's a decision tree. It helps someone understand, based on what my needs are or based on what my assets are, what are the kinds of planned giving vehicles I really should be considering? And that can help springboard conversation between non-experts to still be effective.
All right. So now if we want to be connected with you in a more personal way, not just through a website, are you ever out? I'm asking a question that you know that I know the answer to, but are you out and about in the nonprofit, universe at conferences and trade shows? So I'm being a little cheeky here because we are so honored and grateful and proud to have Eder Financial as a Raise sponsor. So for Raise Nation, who may not be familiar, Raise Nation is part of the annual Raise Conference, which is hosted by One Cause, but it's not a user conference. It's open to the entire nonprofit community. And we are just so grateful. And thank you, Dan, for your company's support. You're going to be there front and center in the sponsor pavilion, right? And so your team's going to be there, and you welcome everybody, I hope, to just walk up and have this conversation, and they can go into a deeper conversation with you at Raise?
Correct. I would certainly encourage folks to come with me or my president, Nevin. We'll both be there.
Oh, you're going to be there. I'm excited to meet you in
We'll be
person.
there in San Antonio. So
yeah.
we would certainly encourage folks to, as they're able, join us there. We do also go to some industry specific, such as in higher ed or in the retirement space conferences. I'd encourage folks to try to tap in with me on LinkedIn if they
that is
are
a good
part
idea.
of a specific industry chain. That way they can kind of keep tabs on what kind of conferences we're looking at being at next. And depending upon the level of collaboration and relationship that someone we're looking for, tap me on the shoulder. Maybe I can come to your conference or event. Maybe it would make sense for me to come speak with your donors and help prep them for some of these conversations in a more formal capacity. We are happy to do some ad hoc conversation as well. But yes, conferences.
I love that. I love that. So if a nonprofit had a conference, like one that comes to mind is Big Brothers Big Sisters. I know they have a beautiful, beautiful conference with our friend there, Deb Barge, and her team. So that's a good place for connections, to happen. But you'll also do an ad hoc conference for a nonprofit if we put square pegs in square holes to talk to their donors. And I love that idea. That's fantastic. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. So creative. Okay, great. Well, I'm really glad that, you mentioned San Antonio. So that's right. Raise will be taking place September 8th and 9th in San Antonio along the Riverwalk. It's beautiful. So if you're coming to Raise or you're thinking about it, please come. And don't forget to stop by Eder Financial booth, because you want to unpack this a little bit more and just empower yourself with the knowledge. So Dan, I want to ask you two things as we wrap up this. One, and I'm going to ask them together, if that's okay. One, what is your message to nonprofits, especially about their plan giving program? And two, what is your message to just anyone listening, to donors, to people that have a philanthropic mindset, that are maybe planning their legacy? What is your message to them?
My message specifically to the nonprofits is be willing to invest in your own future. I know it can be easy.
I love that. That's a quote.
Be easy to look at the next 6 months, 1 month, 12 months as where a lot of the need is, but give the gift of impact to future staff, to future boards. The gifts that you're putting in place today will likely not materialize in your tenure in your position. Give the gift to them. Empower them to be able to make more, bigger, more impactful decisions in the future than you could today. And for the donors, I'd encourage you to consider what makes your heart sing. I cannot tell you what stirs your soul, whether it's girls' education, rainforest preservation, mentorship. Yes, there are so many amazing things that happen in this country in that third space, right? You've got your home life, you've got your work life, and then you've got everything else. And when you think of the world around us and the impact, your legacy that you want to give, focus on the what. It's easy to say as a donor, it's easy to say, oh, I wish I had more money to give. Oh, I wish the timing were a little bit different. Oh, I wish. Well, the one thing you've got the most control over as a donor is that self-discernment. What do you love? And once you can define that, it will direct all these other plan giving conversations and help them realize what your dreams are, what you want to leave behind you. And that is a gift.
For sure. It's a gift of the heart, right? It's a different kind of giving. It's so peaceful and warm, and it's just different, right? There's nothing transactional about this. It's beautiful. I really can't wait to meet you coming up in September in San Antonio. So Dan, you'll be there. And who is joining you?
Our president, Nevin Doolabom.
Nevin. Okay. I can't wait to. And you know what? Raise Nation, you can't wait to meet these guys either. You need to learn more. Take 10, 15, 20 minutes, stop by their booth, or we'll have all of their links in the show notes. And Dan's going to send me over some specific resources to these one-pagers that you're going to have to take a look at over your next cup of coffee. We can go on and on. I think there's a lot to unpack with planned giving and all of the services that Eder Financial provides to nonprofits. But we'll just have Dan back, and we'll do a part 2, and we'll pick up another topic. But this is an important one. Please sustain your nonprofit. Give Eder Financial a call. But for today, that's a wrap. Big thank you to Dan Radcliff, Program Director at Eder Financial. See, I did it good on the intro. I killed it on the outro. But we'll get all your contact information in our show notes. To each of you, thank you for tuning in. You're truly the heartbeat of this community. Your voices, your experiences make Raise Nation Radio uniquely inspiring. So please don't be a stranger. Join us on the show, share your story, share our episodes, and let's continue building this amazing community together. Dan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Can't wait to see you in a couple of months.
Thank you, Dawn. Appreciate the time.
Until next time, you all stay fearless out there and keep raising the nation. Fearless Fundraisers, that's a wrap for today. A heartfelt thank you to our guests for sharing their stories, insights, and expertise. And to you, our fantastic audience, for everything you do to build brighter tomorrows in our communities. We hope today's content inspires you to amplify your mission and grow your impact. Don't forget to join us for new episodes every Thursday, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or catch us on YouTube and on demand at onecause.com. And before we go, we'd love your help in growing this podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe to Raise Nation Radio. Share it with a friend, and please leave us a review so we can continue delivering content that inspires and empowers. Raise Nation Radio is produced in partnership with One Cause, your go-to for digital fundraising solutions that connect nonprofits with their donors and drive results. Visit onecause.com or scan the QR code to schedule a one-to-one with their fundraising experts and explore the latest tools and innovations to help you reach more and raise more. Plus, be sure to check out their extensive catalog of free resources to support your mission. All the links are in the show notes. Raise Nation Radio is inspired by the annual Raise Conference, presented by One Cause. We'd love to see you in person at the next Raise event in September. It's a 2-day experience featuring over 35 CFRE accredited sessions, dynamic speakers, and the latest innovations from our sponsor pavilion, and priceless networking opportunities. And while you're there, don't miss the Fearless Fundraiser Party. It's where memories are made and lifelong friendships are formed. Secure your spot today at onecause.com/raise. The link is also in the show notes. Until next time, thank you for tuning in, and as always, stay fearless.